Welcome to the Murder Media Podcast, where we analyse and overthink true crime media. I am your host, Dr. Stella Marie Gaynor, and you can follow the Murder Media Project on Instagram at murdermedia81, that's the numbers 81, and on Facebook at Murder Media, and you can email the podcast direct at murdermedia81@gmail.com. So we're back. Series or season, which is better? Season 2? Series 2? I don't know, but it's the second one of whatever it is. And of course the break was longer than anticipated. Well, no, I anticipated that there would be a long break, so maybe the break was longer than promised. I don't know. I think I hedged my bets, didn't I? And I didn't give an exact return date. There might have been some speculation that I'd come back before Christmas, but that was never going to happen. But I'm back, I'm here now, and I've got lots to tell you and lots to update you on. When I finished up recording last time, so last summer, I was about to start teaching semester 1. I did teach semester 1 and it was as busy as ever, it was as fun as ever, but it is quite intense for me, semester 1. Then it was Christmas, then it was New Year, then it was January, and for me that means wading through weeks and weeks of marking, and honestly, dry January has got nothing on assessment period. Good God, it's a slog. And then when I was done with the marking, I crept kind of blinking into the light to semester 2, which is still going on as I record this, and more importantly, or perhaps more interestingly, I can get back to the book proposal and finally finish the bloody thing. So I did finish it and I did send it off. I edited the annotated table of contents, so they wanted essentially a contents page for the whole book, but then for each chapter heading to have, like, I'm sure I said in the last episode, to have maybe, 1 or 2 paragraphs describing each chapter. There was a prospectus document that needed, can't remember now, blanked it from my mind. It needed things like, what are the other books that are similar? How is your book contributing to the conversation? Stuff like that. It wanted a cover letter. I updated my CV, which that's always a challenge, isn't it? Updating the CV, remembering what you've done over the past couple of years. Anyway, I did that, and then it wanted 2 chapters, so I did draft them. I drafted one around the end of November, and then I drafted the second one in the last week before Christmas. So I had those drafts, and then I left that second draft a couple of weeks, and I looked at it again over New Year, and sort of redrafted, rejigged, re-edited. It's always weird when I read stuff that I've written, because there's always the fear that if there's been a bit of time since you wrote it, a couple of months maybe, always the fear that it's crap and that you're just gonna have to start again. Both chapters seemed alright, and then I read them again, and then I probably read it again and added bits in and took stuff out and made some analysis a bit tighter, and then I did the bibliographies for each of the 2 chapters, and that, I remember that morning, that took 4 hours to do that morning. Then I read them again, and then I probably read them one more time just to be safe, and then I got my shit together and realised that there's no perfect chapter, but there's a finished chapter. So I got my shit together and I sent the proposal off. I'd made a plan with myself to get it all sent off by a certain date so that I could crack on with other things. I'd worked really hard that week to get my proposal done and get it sent off, and on the Friday morning I was pressing send on the email off to the editor, and I got my office buddy to witness me pressing send, and we were like, yay, you've done it, you've pressed send. And then 30 seconds later I got the out of office email from the editor guy. He'd was away that day, and I had to wait until Tuesday for him to tell me that he'd received it. Anyway, it got sent, it got done. The editor, the publishers, they have the proposal, so now I wait. I sit and I wait, and I try not to think about it. While I'm waiting, I've got other stuff to do. I've got other stuff to write about. I've got other stuff to podcast about, to plan, to organise. So before I get to the stuff that changed in the final book proposal, because the final episode that I did at the end of series 1 of the Murder Media podcast, I was talking about where the book proposal was and how I was seeing the book, how it was shaking down at that point, and some changes did happen, so I want to get to those in a second. But first, I want to talk about what's coming up. So in April, we've got the Murder Media Symposium. This is a free event. Call for papers is now closed. All papers that are accepted are in and booked in with time slots and all that stuff. I put the schedule together this week, and that got sent off to the speakers. The event is at the university and is free to attend. If you would like to attend, please contact me via the Murder Media podcast email, murdermedia81@gmail.com. That's numbers 81. We've got loads of interesting papers. We've got true crime fandoms, the satanic panic, commodification of the serial killer, true crime and social media, representation of victims, true crime and gender, sensationalism, ethics, podcasting, all kinds of things going on. So it should be a really good day. After that, I'll be bringing my Murder Media musings to the Dracula thing in Derby. There's a big event going on to celebrate Dracula on stage. 150 years? I don't know. A large chunk of time since Dracula was first on stage. Not the man himself. Obviously, the first stage production of Dracula. Anyway, I'm giving a paper at that, and I'll link the event in the show notes. The Colf papers on that is closed as well, but there's a load of stuff going on across a number of days. There's like gigs, there's fancy dress, there's a conference, there's all sorts of stuff going on, and it's at, where is it at? It's at the Museum of Making at Silk Mill Lane in Derby. But I'll link the event if you fancy going. It does look really good fun, actually. And then, after that, I'll be giving a lecture at Miskatonic in London in June. There I'll be looking at murder media and horror and the gory, bloody spectacle of murder. Tickets for that are not free. It's not much though, it's about a tenner. I'll link Miskatonic in the show notes. They've got a load of excellent lectures going on across the year. So if you're in or near London and you like horror, then I honestly can't recommend Miskatonic enough. I want to catch up on some stuff that I was still unsure of during series. I don't know which is the best one. Series 1? Season 1? I'm probably going to keep chopping and changing, so, whatever. It's my podcast. Anyway, I want to catch up on some stuff that I was still unsure of at the end of season 1. So remember the episode that I did, I can't remember what number it was, but I did an episode on Lizzie Borden and the ghost hunting. Do you remember? It was John, all that stuff. So I wasn't sure where that research was going to go. I'd done it in a conference paper, always with the plan to extend it into some published writing. And then I wasn't sure if it would go in the book or not. And well, it's not. I decided that I didn't have another place to put another piece of media content about Lizzie Borden, and I wasn't going to look at any of the ghost hunting in any more detail in the book, so I've decided to turn the Lizzie Borden ghost hunting It Was John stuff into a journal article. I mentioned in that episode on Lizzie Borden and the ghost hunting that there were other YouTube channels that combine crime and ghost hunting, so what I've been thinking about is I want to look more at that as a kind of side quest or side plot to the Murder Media project. I like how it combines some of my other or previous research interests in horror, obviously, and then the codes and conventions of TV ghost hunting. It maps onto my previous research into TV more generally. So yeah, true crime and ghost hunting side quest. So stay tuned for that, I guess. 2 things that changed in the book proposal. I mentioned in the final episode of Series 1 that Sins of Our Mother, the Netflix series on the Vallow Daybell case, that it would get a big discussion in the Netflix chapter. Well, again, it's not. So like the Lizzie Borden stuff, I didn't have space to have another text that would have dealt with the Vallow Daybell case. And in the Netflix chapter, if I made room for Sins of Our Mother, I would have been really squashing down the sections on the Conversations with the Killer series, all 3 of them. So Vallow Daybell case got axed, basically. So maybe I can look at Sins of Our Mother in more detail here, on an episode here, because one of the episodes in this series will be looking at cults on screen. And you all know I love a cult. And Laura, who we had on in Series 1, she loves a cult as well. So I think we did mention it on our episode back in episode 4, I think, of Series 1. So we'll bring back some cult stuff, and I think that's where I'll put Sins of Our Mother. Anyway, so Vallow Daybell got ditched, and then another change was not another axing, it was to bring in a case, and that's the case of the Unabomber. So there's various reasons that I brought it into the book. It's a mad case. If you don't know, Ted Kaczynski was the Unabomber. He murdered 3 people and injured 23 people between 1978 and 1995. He sent bombs through the mail, and he even tried to bring down a plane with a bomb sent via airmail, which went off when the altimeter, I don't know, when it hit whatever the cruising altitude is, 30,000 feet or whatever it is. Anyway, that bomb didn't work. It just kind of released a load of smoke. If it had worked, it would have been devastating. Anyway, he was sending bombs out from 1978 to 1995, so that's got to be one of the longest runs, hasn't it? One of the longest careers. Anyway, he's dead now. His brother, Ted Kaczynski's brother, David Kaczynski, shopped him to the police. The Unabomber sent letters to newspapers. He wrote a manifesto, Industrial Society and its Future, which I've read, and it's tedious. But there's loads going on, and I've chosen to add this one in because it's a great example for my podcast chapter in the book. So in the book, I'm going to look at the last podcast on the left. Obviously, it's one of my favourite things in the world. I'm going to choose their 2-episode series on the Unabomber. In that chapter, I want to really unpack the improv comedy elements, and the improvised version of Ted Kaczynski that is played by Henry Zabrowski is really rich and perfect for analysis. To accompany it, because if you remember, the book is to look at cases as they move across media. To accompany it, I'll look at the Unabomber story as told by my chosen YouTubers. To go with the Unabomber stuff and to go with the podcast chapter, and also the YouTube chapter as well, because the YouTubers that I look at are also quite funny. I've recently ordered a book called Tragedy Plus Time, National Trauma and Television Comedy, and it's by Philip Skepansky. That book will provide me with some really useful frameworks for understanding the tensions between comedy and the podcast and, the story of the Unabomber. And then I'll also be able to unpack this idea like, tragedy plus time equals comedy, like the famous phrase. And that book will really help me to do that. So in that book, the author Philip Skapansky looks at national traumas like the assassination of JFK, 9/11, and how that transforms into comedy. I'll also use the last podcast on the left episode about Peter Sutcliffe, again for the improvisation. As I've added the Unabomber case to the book, a podcast episode and a YouTube episode, I thought we'd start series 2 of the Murder Media podcast with a look at some other... There are a few bits of Unabomber Murder Media out there. That's really hard to say. Unabomber Murder Media. Good Lord. So you say that. There was a 2020 Netflix series, Unabomber in his own words. And honestly, as far as that one's concerned, don't bother. God. If I may quote Henry Zabrowski from last podcast on the left...
I spent a while reading his manifesto this morning.
Yeah.
What a fucking crybaby nerd.
They always are.
I couldn't finish the Netflix series. It was too much yelling at the TV. Just like, oh God, Ted, shut up. I'll probably finish it. I will go back and finish it. It keeps popping up on my Netflix thing and I'm just like, oh, I can't. I really can't. It's his voice. Anyway, but before that, there was Unabomber, The True Story, which was a made-for-TV movie shown on the USA Network in 1996. It's got quite the cast, actually. Robert Hayes and Tobin Bell are in it. I would recommend having a look at that if you can find it. And I love a made-for-TV movie. I love how trashy they are. And then in 2003, there's The Net, not to be confused with the Sandra Bullock vehicle of the same name. This is a documentary, though some of the parts of the internet describe it as a film essay. Whatever. It's directed by Lutz Dambeck. It's a documentary about the backstory of Ted Kaczynski. Now, the full title of this film essay is The Net, the Unabomber, LSD and the Internet. It's on YouTube, so I'll link it in the show notes. The whole film is there. The whole film essay is there. It's a very low-budget film. It feels like a student film, to be honest, and it's more of a history of the internet and cyberspace than the Unabomber. It situates Kaczynski in the broader technological developments of the internet and cyberspace, but again, snooze fest. I wouldn't recommend. If you want to go and have a look, but that's on you. And then eventually, there's 2 screen versions of the Unabomber story that I think are very good. First, Discovery Channel's 2017 dramatisation, Manhunt, Unabomber.
I want you to think about the mail for a minute. A piece of paper can cross a continent like we're passing notes in class. If a box comes with your name on it, you can't even imagine doing anything other than obey.
We are hunting the deadliest serial bomber in history, the Unabomber. For 17 years, he's been planting and mailing bombs, and we really have no friggin' clue who he is or why he's doing this.
I thought the Unabomber case was over.
3 new mail bombs, more deadly than before. I've had profilers working on this thing for 15 years, and we're right back to where we started. I need somebody that sees things differently, and like it or not, that's you.
Right. I don't have any friends, even no one to talk to. These aren't personal targets. They are representational targets. You're sending a message. That's why you used me.
We don't know what connects them. We don't know his code.
Gotta make him hear you. Gotta make him listen.
We're still assuming he's a low IQ, pissed off airline mechanic, when he's actually been outsmarting us the whole time.
Do you ever think that the reason you haven't got him in 17 years is that you're underestimating him?
This 8-episode series opens with the now familiar text prologue that tells us it is based on true events, basically the title card first. Then we get a voiceover of our Ted Kaczynski, as you heard in the trailer. Kaczynski is played by Paul Bettany in this drama, and he asks us to consider the US postal system, how a piece of paper crosses a continent like passing notes in class, and how when we see that piece of paper with an address on it, we can't help but obey, or some such twaddle from Kaczynski. The opening sequence of the first episode of Manhunt Unabomber opens with this speech from Kaczynski about the post and obeying and all that nonsense. As the opening sequence continues of episode 1, the package eventually gets to an office and a secretary picks it up and takes it to the intended recipient. The camera then swings round to the outside of this office block. It's a glass-fronted building with many identical rectangular windows, and it looks very much like a hive, a nod to the drone-like sensibility of obeying workers that Kaczynski was yapping on about. Through the glass, we see the man lean over and open his package. Then it explodes, and it blows out the glass of the office that he stood in. This is the mail bomb attack that killed Gilbert Brent Murray. He was the president of the California Forestry Commission. Murray was not the Unabomber's first victim. Murray was the third person to die as a result of Kaczynski's decade-long bombing career. Manhunt Unabomber, I'll just call it Manhunt, shall I? It's a procedural drama. It belts along quite fast from a starry-eyed Jim Fitzgerald, or Fitz, recently graduating from profiling school, or whatever it is, as he's called to his first job because he's a whiz with recognising stuff in writing. And his first job is to help catch the Unabomber. He's flung into working with the dick-swinging blokes at the FBI who don't want to listen to him because he's young and he's new. Then he gets proven right and they start listening to him. You kind of, you know how that narrative goes. Manhunt also shows us Kaczynski, shows him making bombs, living in his hut, going to the library, having a friendship with a local lad who needs help with maths. All these things are put together to create this quite rich drama, quite rich retelling of the Unabomber. Now, it is a procedural, but it echoes Hannibal, the series, the TV series. Because when Fitz goes to various bomb crime scenes, for instance, the Rentex store where the bomb in the car park killed someone, and that scene from the first bomb we saw in the opening sequence of episode 1, Fitz wanders around the crime scene, seeing what the Unabomber saw, seeing what the victims saw, what eyewitnesses saw. But of course the crime scenes are now deserted. Fitz mutters to himself, addressing the Unabomber directly, speculating on what Ted wants, what he thinks, what he feels, what he desires. This feels very much like Will Graham in Hannibal and his ability to kind of go inside himself and see the murders happen. For Hannibal, these sequences with Will's gift are a useful shortcut to storytelling. The short episode length afforded by network television, which is interrupted in the hourly slot with lots of advert breaks, Will's quick step to the killer's thinking and motives gets the plot to the point quicker than standard detective work. Here in Manhunt, Fitz also does this. He gets inside the Unabomber's head to develop his profile in these jaunts to the crime scene. And while I'm sure that seeing the crime scene helps piece together the picture, for television it gives us a quick step in the narrative unfolding. At the scene, Fitz is able to put together his developing picture or profile of the Unabomber and then rush back to the FBI offices to excitedly tell his new bosses what he's thinking, only again to be given short shrift. Glenn Kreber notes that, quote, "The procedural genre has a fascination with the use of forensics, search warrants and interrogation practices," end quote, and all of this is here in Manhunt. The procedures and practices of the hunt for the Unabomber as explored in this series are more than a bit wild. So the fact that the department, the FBI, gave time and money to Fitz and his little team to explore the manifesto, industrial society and its future, to explore the linguistics of the writing to figure out who the bomber was, that was new, it was cutting edge, and it was a little bit wild. We get plenty of time in Manhunt with Janet Reno and the decision to publish the manifesto in the Washington Post. We get plenty of dynamic shots of FBI agents striding down corridors, walking and talking, people slamming down phones, working late hours, and the men doing that thing where they, when they take their glasses off and then pinch the top of their nose with their fingers to show us just how tired and stressed they are. There's a lot of that. The scenes with Fitz and the FBI are snappy, busy, and they all have the hum of a busy office environment as an ever-present score. When Manhunt takes us to Kaczynski, the silence of the forest in Lincoln, Montana, is for the most part a deafening silence. Kaczynski's in his hut, washing in a bucket, building his bombs and befriending local troubled teens. He's quiet, he's calm, and he's got this eerie air of smugness. The portrayal of Kaczynski in Manhunt is calm, collected, together, and seemingly able to cope with his life of self-enforced solitude. With the focus of the series fixed on the procedural, Manhunt spends more time with the investigation team than it does with Kaczynski. Establishing shots of FBI offices use the title in. These are directions in the script to lay text at the bottom of the screen as the new scene starts. So the text tells us the place and the year in which the scene is taking place, giving a sense of the official approach to the events unfolding. It gives a sense of urgency. It pulls us at pace through the investigation as the Unabomber makes threats about an airline, demands his manifesto be printed, and the urgency of the decisions made regarding the direction the investigation will take. Manhunt, as I said, with its large narrative space, because it's an 8-part series, each episode's about 43 minutes long-ish, has the time to tell various elements of the Unabomber story. We get scenes with his brother David and his wife, whose name escapes me. What's she called? I can't remember what she's called. As they come to the realisation that Ted, David's brother, is the Unabomber. We also, most interestingly in this series, get a flashback episode. So episode 6 is titled Ted, and we go back to his school days. We see him skip 2 grades because he's super smart. We see him lose his best friend as this best friend starts to date girls. We see him go to Harvard when he was 16, which is fucking mad. Like, don't send kids to university before they're ready. It's ridiculous. We see him meet the genuinely horrible Professor Henry Murray and undergo Murray's awful experiments. Now, conspiracy fans, This is the link to MK Ultra. This does develop some sympathy for the young Kaczynski. He was treated appallingly by Harvard and by the program that may or may not have been MK Ultra. It was MK Ultra. It's no wonder that he developed a severe distrust and fear of the world. Still no need to send mail bombs though, but, we can kind of see how and why he was completely fucked up. It's a long series and I do recommend it as a decent watch. It fits very much the standard television procedural. The characters of the FBI do feel a bit like stock characters, and it only scratches at the surface of why they wanted Kaczynski to plead guilty. So there's one line in episode 2, the episode's called Pure Wooder, where Fitz is about to go meet Ted in person. Ted Kaczynski, not Bundy. After they finally arrest the Unabomber, it's about to go to trial and the feds want Kaczynski to plead guilty. Then he'll just go to prison. There'll be no trial by jury, no risk of him walking free, and most importantly for the feds, for the FBI, no risk that the Unabomber's ideas will be made more public, to be explained in detail in the theatre and the stage of the courtroom, to be explained by Ted Kaczynski himself. One of the feds, I think it's Don Ackerman, says something like, "We don't want to give Kaczynski a stage because his ideas are dangerous." And for me, that's the most interesting point that I'd like to see unpacked more in a piece of media about the Unabomber. Yes, he sent mail bombs. Yes, it's true crime. It's a murder, manhunt, puzzle, mystery that went on for actual decades. But I'd like a Unabomber media text to unpack this point some more. So why, Mr. FBI man, why don't you want the world to hear Ted Kaczynski explain properly, on camera, his ideas? Now I realise I'm probably expecting far too much of a basic cable television drama. So basic cable channels, lest we forget, while not under the jurisdiction of the FCC, that's the Federal Communications Commission, so the people who shout at channels if they make inappropriate content, they still must appease the advertisers, right? So basic cable get half their money from cable carrier fees and they get half their money from advertisers. And advertisers are reluctant to align their products with TV content that might cause a problem. Now this has changed, of course, in recent years for genre programming, so horror, for example. Read my other book for a full explanation. But basically, a procedural on HBO or another premium service, one that has no adverts and is entirely subscriber funded, will always be able to make more of a political, satirical comment, overtly anyway. In Manhunt, it skirts around this issue of the fear that the FBI felt, in having Ted Kaczynski sort of explain himself, like I said, in the theatre and stage of a courtroom. Now, we do get some nice scenes with Fitz at a red stoplight, so he's driving late at night, he stops at a red light, there's no one else on the roads are completely dead, and he just stares at the light, puzzling over why he obeys the instruction to stop. So he's starting to think about Ted Kaczynski's ideas. Ted Kaczynski's ideas are starting to seep in a little bit. If we get the context of Kaczynski's messed up college years, which we do in Manhunt, but then the feds need for him to plead guilty is kind of danced around. I wanted more of that. I wanted more connections to be made. And it's frustrating to me because that fed, that FBI agent says, his ideas are dangerous. And I'm like, but why? Come on, tell us more. Why, FBI dude? What is the threat to you? Tell us, because it's there, and it would be a really interesting drama to unpack that a little bit. So if anyone's got the phone number of somebody at HBO or Showtime perhaps, can you give them a ring and tell them that I want another Unabomber drama, and I want them to unpack a lot more why they didn't want Kaczynski to be given a stage for his ideas. I mean, we all know why, but I just want to see it done. I want to see it done in an exciting, gritty drama. In the real world, the press were given very limited access to the Unabomber trial. But it wasn't a trial, was it? Because Kaczynski did eventually plead guilty. He agreed to life in prison, so he swerved a trial by jury and he avoided a possible death sentence. But there was a day in court for the victim impact statements and sentencing. The media coverage of that was really odd. So all the big news corps, so ABC, NBC, etc., they formed the Unabomber Trial Media Group. Only what were described as bona fide news reporters were allowed press passes. Every day there was a lottery to find out which media channels were allowed into the court. So the controlling of the narrative here is wild. And I'm sorry, this episode is wandering off into actually being a true crime podcast. I'm talking about media though, it works. Anyway, the journalists who couldn't get into the courtroom, they could listen from another room, but only after they'd paid a $5,000 fee to do so. The control was massive. And that's what I mean. That's what I want unpacked in a drama. Maybe by Mike Flanagan. That'd be good, wouldn't it? If you're listening, incredible director Mike Flanagan, can you do that? I know you're not busy. Another thing about Manhunt and its fidelity to the story. Now, I think I talked about this in episode 1 of series 1. I can't remember if I did or not, and I'm not going to listen back to it. In terms of adaptation, if you're adapting stories across media, fidelity in adaptation studies isn't really a marker of value or, something being well adapted. If something's real or not doesn't necessarily matter. I'm tying myself in knots a little bit here. And it is a dramatisation, right? And it is based on a true story. So the series starts, as each episode starts, with a text card based on a true story. So the key word there is based. So it doesn't have to be, because it's based on, and because it's dramatisation, it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be completely true. But it does something mad, right? So Manhunt isn't quite right in how they get their smoking gun, the proof that meant that FBI were able to get their search warrant to search Kaczynski's hut and arrest him. In Manhunt, it's Fitz who finds the phrase, "Eat your cake and have it too," in the manifesto and in the letters which Ted Kaczynski wrote to his brother David. Fitz find it, it's the smoking gun, and the warrant is signed, and hooray for the FBI, they've caught the Unabomber. In reality, and this is what, when I was watching it, I was like, really? In reality, it was David Kaczynski, the brother, and his private investigator that discovered this. Then they took that to the feds. In Manhunt, it's all the FBI. It's all Fitz's work. Now, Jim Fitzgerald was a real person, still is. He's got a production credit on the series. So look, like I tried to explain 30 seconds ago, 100% fidelity in a dramatised version of events is not needed. It's a drama, it's fiction. But come on, to take something that was found by a private investigator and the brother and give it to the FBI, I thought that was a bit off. So the bravery of David Kaczynski, the brother, in shopping his own brother, imagine the turmoil of that. The bravery in shopping his own brother to the law is glossed over. It does show David Kaczynski being a bit upset about it. Dave, like I know him, but, I'd be fuming about this. Anyway, so they dance around the controlled narrative. It leaves out the weird media access. It fabricates the FBI finding "eat your cake and have it too." It's all a bit pro-FBI. It's very cops positive. Propaganda is a strong word. Copaganda might be a better word. Anyway, Manhunt, it is actually good. It's one of the few drama series that my fella has actually watched with me. I usually can't get him to commit to a long-form TV series, but he liked this one, so that's something, isn't it? I'm not actually sure where you can watch it right now. In the UK, it has gone off Netflix. I got a DVD of it for a couple of quid on eBay, so maybe do that and enjoy Manhunt Unabomber. In 2021, we get an Amazon original about the Unabomber, a film directed by Tony Stone called Ted K. The film sticks entirely with Kaczynski. No investigation, no feds, no brother, no flashbacks, no nasty Murray at Harvard, just Ted in his hut with his bombs and his grievances and with his shower made out of a bucket with holes in it. The film starts with the text on screen, our usual "this is a true story" preamble. The start text is quite lengthy and it scrolls up the screen, so it gives some backstory. It tells us Ted went to Harvard young, that he left, and that the film is made on the same land where Ted had his little hut, and it tells us that the film uses Ted's words from his journals and from his manifesto. Right away, the film is positioning itself as authentic. This is Ted Kaczynski's words, so this must be the good shit, right? Kinda. It's an interesting addition to the Unabomber sort of, media canon, as it were, and because it sticks with Kaczynski, we don't see any bombs go off. That's a lie, we do. Hang on. We see two, I think? Well, we only see one actual victim. I've only watched it once. We see a fella who's got his fingers blown off. Anyway, the point is we don't really see the effect of what the Unabomber does. We don't see much of the effect of the bombs in much the same way as Kaczynski didn't see, because he was, sat in his hut, shitting in a bucket. The film staged with Kaczynski in the woods, so it felt to me that the impact or the horror of Kaczynski's actions is not quite there. So Kaczynski spent decades mailing bombs, we know that, and it's like, who does that? He tried to kill. He only managed it 3 times. And he was all sad when he failed. He tried to bomb a plane full of people while it was flying. Like I said, if he'd managed that, the disaster would have been horrific. Now listen, I'm sat here yakking about true crime, murder media, and I said way back in the first episode of Series 1 that a crime drama doesn't have to show any bodies. So Des, for instance, on ITV doesn't show any bodies and it's still harrowing. But this film, Ted K, just shows us this lonely, sad, grubby little man building his little bombs, sat in his little hut, having his little wanks, dreaming his little dream sequences, and imagining a woman he kissed once years ago but she didn't want to go out with him because it was Ted Kaczynski and he was awkward as hell and he apparently smelled like spoiled milk. Anyway, the film was starting to make me feel kind of sorry for him, and I'm watching it like, hang on, don't do that. This man, this grubby shits in a hole he dug in the ground, is so pissed off that no one likes him, that he can't get a girlfriend, that he sends bombs through the post, he evades capture, he murders 3 times, and this film is doing dream sequences that show just how much he wants a girlfriend. What? And I know, like, the Harvard MK Ultra stuff is fucked up, but Kaczynski, mate, murder by mail bomb is not the answer, and making me feel sorry for him is not the answer. Anyway, listen to him.
The Industrial Revolution has been a disaster for the human race.
Oil poured into the Sound at the rate of 20,000 gallons an hour.
The Montana Electric Company sprays cancer-causing herbicides without any warnings to the public. I cried about what was happening to the country. Desecration. But I have a plan for revenge. People say violence and the taking of human life is not a way to resolve problems. Can't work. But history shows that it very often does work.
I have my own mind. I think my own thoughts, and then I do what I think I should do.
I want to kill some people.
We have breaking news. It's been more than 5 days since the Unabomber threatened to blow up an airliner flying in or out of Los Angeles.
God damn it! Fucking cocksucker, man!
My motive? I want to change the world.
Ted Kay, then, the film, in Staying with Kaczynski, shows us what else he got up to, aside from the mail bombs. He was a vandal, regularly vandalising and breaking and burning things he thought were damaging to the environment. The film shows Ted breaking and entering into a house to break and damage a set of snowmobiles. He burns a massive tractor thing. I don't know what it is. It's a big, offensive, scary machine used in deforestation. In his cabin, Kaczynski writes many journals. We know that a substantial amount of this writing he did in code. In the opening minutes of the film, we get a shot of Kaczynski writing in code. It's a shot like over his shoulder. He's sat on his narrow little bed, writing in his little journal. He's sat on his little bed. He's got his knees bent and he's got the notebook sort of resting on his legs, and the camera's over his shoulder, like we're leaning over to read it. And as it does that, the film subtitles the code on the book that we're looking at as the translation. So I thought that was quite a nice touch to illustrate the use of code and how complex it was. Across the film, it hits the key markers in the Unabomber case, but from the point of view of Ted Kaczynski. He goes to a library and looks at a Who's Who book. We know that that's where he got the list of people that he wanted to bomb. He sees news footage of the Exxon oil spill. He sees crop dusting and quarry excavation, and all these things spur him on with his bombing campaign. Because it sticks with Kaczynski, Ted Kay uses conversations he has with his family via a payphone as these kind of signposts or markers of his relationship with his family, with his mother and with his brother. In the first instance of Ted calling his mother and his brother in the same few minutes, the camera spins around the phone booth. In the conversation, he has outbursts at both his brother and his mother, blaming his mum for allowing him to go up a year in school, blaming her for the fact that he's still a virgin. And then in that conversation, he's also asking her for money. He accuses his brother of being controlled for his wife, and then asks him for money. And as all this is going on, the camera spinning around the phone booth is dizzying and it feels out of control. This gives us an idea of how it felt for Kaczynski to talk to his family. It's flustering for Ted. It's off balance. He's out of control when he talks to his family. He calls them to ask for financial help, yet he can't help but insult them and accuse them and blame them for all of his shortcomings. So eventually, of course, Kaczynski's caught, the feds turn up to the cabin and they need to get him out. In this film, which is all from Ted's point of view, the knock at the cabin door and the men outside speaking to him about land boundaries is all shot from Ted's point of view, from inside the cabin, from him looking out. As they grab him, we again stick with Kaczynski's experience of this moment, rather than the tension felt by the authorities in this moment as we're shown in Manhunt. So if you take those two sequences together, the Manhunt sequence where they get Ted out the cabin, and then the Ted Kay sequence where Ted is pulled out of the cabin, it's nice to sort of look at them together and to see it from both both points of view. So as Ted is dragged out of the cabin and walked away, he looks back at the trees and back at the mountains. So we're in Ted K now in the film. The shot then goes still and we get a slow creep in on Ted's face, which fades to a shot of the Colorado Supermax prison where he was held until his death. And then we get the usual epilogue text. It tells us the sentencing, the tip from his brother, the eat your cake and have it too thing. So together, Manhunt and Ted K form a decent story of the Unabomber. And if you can face it, that in his own words, Doc, that's over on Netflix, but God, he's a whining shit. Anyway, alright, so there's some stuff on the Unabomber and the media text that engage with the story. It's a fascinating case, and I would recommend the last podcast on the left, 2-part series on it. There's loads of detail in there and loads of laughs as well. Thank you for listening, and importantly, thank you for coming back for a second go-round of Murder Media. I'll be bringing some guests on in future episodes. We'll look at, as we've said, cults on screen. I'll also be looking at some more YouTube stuff, the intertextual nature of Murder Media. I'll have a look at understanding this Murder Media stuff using frameworks of transmedia storytelling as well. Do follow the Murder Media Project over on Instagram at murdermedia81. The email address, like I said, is murdermedia81@gmail.com. The number's 81. The project has the Facebook page as well, but you can find that. And while I'm reminding you about the socials, I'd also ask you to rate and review on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify. It really helps the podcast to get seen. All right then, so join me next week for some more journeys in Murder Media. Hope you all have a great week. Goodbye.